talk about supermoto for a second, shall we? One of the most underappreciated forms of motorcycling, at least in the US anyway. I happen to love supermoto. Why? Well, let's think about it for a second. You take a dirt bike, which is meant to be light and narrow and agile in the dirt. Wouldn't those qualities transfer well to the pavement also? Slap some 17-inch wheels, put some sticky slick tires on, and suddenly you have a recipe for a really fun track bike, if pavement is more your calling than the dirt. I'm not quite sure why supermoto hasn't taken off in the US like it has in Europe or in Australia and other parts of the world. It's kind of too bad, but I'm glad there's companies like Husqvarna that appreciate supermoto and will bring bikes to the US. Which bike are you talking about, Troy? Well, I'm talking about this one, right here. The 2019 Husqvarna FS450, based on the FC450 motocross platform that Jason Anderson took the Supercross title with. This bike and the FC that it's based on are improved over the last year's model. A couple of changes, some changes to the engine really, and a little bit of design tweaks here and there. It's a lighter bike. The mass is more centralized. They did some work in the heads to bring the mass closer to the bike's center. Power-wise, we're talking, Husqvarna claims it's about 63 horses at the crankshaft. Now, if you think about these pro supercross riders, those bikes are making about 60-ish, 65-ish horsepower to the rear wheel. So, from a 450 single, that's crazy. That is stinking powerful for a little bike like this. And then weight-wise, we're talking, I don't know, 227, 230, 240, somewhere in that ballpark with a full tank of gas. These things are just absolute rippers, and I can't believe more people in the US aren't into them because they're so much fun. But I guess I can see why people aren't into them, because most manufacturers aren't making them. They're making motocross bikes and people are converting them. But with this FS450, for $10,799, you can get a factory supermoto. You don't gotta buy a dirt bike and do all the conversions to it, put the wheels, the tires, the brake kit, etc. You plop down your money, you go ride, and you go ride a hell of a motorcycle. Here's the thing, Husqvarna's only bringing in about 200 of these bikes into the US, and I don't know as of this taping, but if you haven't already spoken up for one, you might already be too late. Luckily for me, I have this one right here. We haven't done a Husqvarna test of any sort in a long while. Yeah, it's a bit self-indulging because I love this so much, but hey, it's a lot of fun. We're gonna go give this thing a whirl, see how it does. Let's come back later and let's go rip right now. Woo! It tells you something when Husqvarna equips this bike stock with ride maps and TC settings.
So hot diggity dog, this FS450 is quite the motorcycle. Which it should be, because if you didn't know, this FS450 is for competition use only. It's not street legal at all. There's no headlight, there's no blinkers, there's no license plate. Like this pipe is not the stock pipe, it's an aftermarket FMF accessory. But nothing about this bike is street legal. There's even a sticker on this other side of the fairings here that says for competition use only. There's no key to the bike, nothing here. There's a start button and a kill switch, and that's it. I mean, there's a map switch as well to switch between the two maps and TC, which I'll get to in a second, but the FS450 is an all-out race bike. If you're serious about supermoto and don't want to put in the time or the money to buy a motocross bike and convert that to supermoto, just plop down 10.8 for this guy right here, and you can go compete right off the bat. It's pretty crazy because it's a firecracker of a motorcycle, and considering it'll probably cost you a lot more than 10.8 to buy a new dirt bike and can do all the conversion to it, this suddenly becomes a real scream if you're in the market for a new supermoto. So let's talk about the FS450. Well, let's start at the engine. I mean, that 450 is a beast. 63 crank horsepower, and you feel every bit of it. You get on the gas and it rockets, it goes. There's a lot of bottom end power, decent mid-range, and it kind of has some pretty good top end too. Not great if you're used to, say, sport bikes, but from the bottom end, really strong and really powerful. I mentioned earlier the FS450 has 2 power modes. I tried both. The map mode 1 gives you full power, a lot of power down low, rockets, throttle response is really crisp. Put it into power mode 2. Throttle response is still crisp, but there's a little softer power delivery, especially on the bottom end. You can still wheelie it very easily, but just the overall hit when you get on the gas is just a tiny bit softer than power mode 1. So for me personally, I preferred power mode 1. The initial hit, that strong bang, wasn't out of control and made the experience more fun and more enjoyable. I mentioned earlier there's maps, but there's also traction control. You have 2 settings, on and off, with traction control, and you can't adjust anything, and it's correlated to the power modes. And the way the TC works on the Husqvarna, there's no wheel speed sensors on this bike. It's a rate of change system, so it detects the engine RPM and how quickly it's rising, and there's some predetermined algorithms for each gear ratio. And if the ECU detects that the spike in RPM has exceeded that predetermined algorithm in the ECU for that gear, that's what it thinks is wheel slip, wheel spin, and it retards the ignition to dial back the power and to get you traction again. It's a similar system to what MV Agusta uses as well. I wish I could tell you how well it works, but I never think I had it working. Maybe I'm just really chicken with the throttle, or I'm really gentle with my power application, or what, but I couldn't feel it working. So if it was working without me knowing it, which is pretty good. That's pretty impressive if that was the case. I have a feeling that was not the case though, because these Bridgestone slicks are really sticky, and so I doubt that I got them slipping under power, because they have tons of grip. Going now to the front side, the Husqvarna FS450 has a 16.5-inch front wheel. You don't really see that too much these days. Most bikes now for street and track use have 17-inch wheels. The 16.5-inch wheel has a little bit quicker transition flickability from side to side. The weird thing I found with this particular bike, it was a little bit slower to turn and transition than I was expecting it to be. It's not slow by any means, but that transition was not as fast as I thought it was going to be. Looking at that front brake, it's a 310 millimeter disc, pretty huge for this little tiny bike that weighs about 227-ish pounds without fuel. A lot of braking power. That Brembo M50 is a really strong caliper. Delivers a lot of stopping power, a lot of feel at the lever. Some people might want more bite from the pads. Personally, I didn't mind it, but people's braking preferences varies. But overall, as a package, man, what a machine. This thing rails, it hauls ass, it's so fast. The 5-speed transmission, click, 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 super easy to shift gears, and when you want to back it in and throw it into a corner, bang some downshifts, that Suter slipper clutch, butter, man. Bang downshifts, slip that clutch lever out, maybe tap the rear brake a little bit, get the thing sliding. It's super controllable. That Suter slipper clutch works super well. And you can just gently get it in the corner and then turn and fire it out. It's really good. As far as suspension goes, the FS450 uses WP components because its parent company is KTM, and KTM owns WP. There you go. Up in the front is an air fork, which you'll see on a lot of motocross and dirt bikes. Actually, you won't see them on a whole lot of new motocross bikes because it doesn't really work very well in the dirt. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have much experience on motocross tracks, but my motocross friends tell me that the air springs on dirt bikes is a bygone thing. A lot of forks are going back to just your standard coil springs. But with the FS450, it uses the air springs still. And on a pavement environment, I didn't have any complaints. You have to make sure that the air pressure is set correctly before you start. But otherwise, I mean, it felt really good. It was really composed under braking. Gave me a lot of feedback in mid-corner. It really responded well to adjustments. From a supermoto point of view, I'm fairly happy with the air fork and with the WP shock in the rear too. So overall, while it may not be the preferred suspension method for dirt bikes these days, for a supermoto, the air fork still does a fine job. That's kind of what I expected this bike to be, right? It's a competition use supermoto. There's not much to gauge it against because this is the only game in town, but man, what a bike this is. So if you are in the market for a supermoto and don't want to muss or fuss with the hassles of putting one together, for $10,799, the FS450 is definitely worth a look. Go to Motorcycle.com, check out my full review there. Tell you what, people, FS450 is a riot of a bike. It's not for everyone. Beginners, don't apply. It's not for you. But if you're that very specific person that wants a supermoto, this is one hell of a bike. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave me a nice comment below. If you didn't like this, leave me a hateful message below and tell me what we could do better. I'm spent. This is a hell of a bike. FS450, go ride one if you can. And if you can't, just go ride supermoto. They're so much fun. All right, I'm done rambling. I'll see you next time.